Namaste, this is Devdutt Pattanaik. My new book is Olympus, an Indian retelling of Greek myths. When I started writing on mythology, I really wanted to write a book on Greek mythology, but the publishers were not interested. They were like, no, write on Indian mythology and that will sell. And I've written 30 books on Indian mythology, and I thought I need a break. So I decided to write one on Greek mythology. But not just any book. I want to write a book about how an Indian who has written 30 books on Indian mythology responds to Greek mythology. That's my take. So it's not a objective book like any of my books. I don't write, I don't have much respect for objectivity. I genuinely believe in subjectivity and the value of subjectivity and my personal experience of the Greek myths, the epics, the stories from all over the world. And I've seen so many books on Ramayana and Mahabharata written by people from Europe and America. I have not come across books on Greek mythology written by Indian. I'm sure there is one somewhere out there. I haven't found it. And I feel I'm just trying to bridge that gap. So the book is designed this way, that you have a retelling of the Greek myths which is pure. Like most of my books like Sita and Jaya, there is a retelling and there are grey boxes. The grey boxes that take you on different journeys into scriptures, rituals, history, geography. And in this, the first bullet point in most cases talks about an Indian link with that story. One, maybe two, and sometimes there's also the differences. What do you see, what do you not see, so that you sort of sense how different or how similar Greek traditions are from us. See, all mythologies have one thing in common. We're dealing with human beings, right? So all mythologies will deal with human fears, ambition, envy, jealousy, anger. That's uniform. That's found everywhere. What distinguishes is the exciting part. Indian mythologies presuppose rebirth. So karma is very important. This idea does not exist in Greek mythology. Greek mythology have one life, and therefore there's a sense of urgency, and you want to do something great and spectacular in that one life. And what you find recurrent in the Greek myths is a sense of tragedy, because no matter how hard you try to change the world, somewhere along the line you realize you are insignificant. And that tension manifests in some of the greatest Greek plays which have been written, like Oedipus, like Medea. All these stories reveal the sense of overwhelming tragedy that a hero experiences after he achieves greatness. It's not something that we find in Indian traditions. Indian traditions are, the stories are far more different, the tonality is different, lots of more energies, lots of different colors, emotions, and they're trying to they're not talking about greatness or achievement or going somewhere. They're trying to figure out who you are and what you are doing. So even a journey from one place to another is not about going somewhere else. It is about discovering yourself. I think that's a fundamental difference that I saw, and that sort of helped me understand the Greek traditions better. Yes, it is there. In fact, we have a very extensive preface which talks about shadows and sunlight. It refers to Plato's famous story of the cave. It's called the allegory of the cave, which the assumption being that we all live in caves looking at shadows, and wisdom is about leaving the cave and finding sunlight. And I show how European and American history is based on this notion of moving out of the shadows to sunlight. And although people think it's philosophy, it's actually a mythic structure of moving from chaos to order. So the entire Greek and the Western civilization follows this model of trying to reach the sunlight. And the Indian model doesn't follow that. In the model, the sage sits in the cave and recognizes the sunlight within him. It's a very different approach. And therefore, you will see this is the clash of civilizations, different people looking at the same thing very, very differently. And long have we been convinced that the Western way is superior, which is very childish. Any good scholar would know that every way of life has value and validity in different contexts. And I'm just trying to establish that. Yes and no. There are parts where we will be exactly the same, because it's like a Venn diagram. There are parts which are similar and there are parts which are dissimilar. We have to appreciate and strengthen the similarity, but we also have to appreciate the differences, because in the similarity lies our humanity. In the difference lies our identity. right? So if everybody behaved like the Japanese, we would have a very strange, homogeneous world. The Japanese will behave like the Japanese, and the Indians will behave like the Indians. Japanese don't have to be ashamed of being Japanese, and Indians don't have to be ashamed of being Indian. And Americans don't have to be ashamed of being American. There is no one way in this global village. It's about diversity. And I think this book talks about the complexities in diversity. It is to recognize there's no such thing as a Greek way. It's the Indian way of looking at the Greeks, just as there's a Greek way of looking at Indians. So for example, when you read a book by Roberto Calasso, and he has written the book Ka on Indian mythology, and someone like me who is reading the same books, I suddenly realized the difference in gaze. He's bringing the European gaze into it. Even the artwork he uses are colonial artworks, not done by Indian artists. And so therefore he's revealing that he is from Europe and sharing this view, and I'm sort of reversing the gaze and saying that, okay, let me look at the Greek stories and see how an Indian would look at it, and with a sense of curiosity and wonder, not from a sense of chauvinism, which I do not appreciate. I think we should see other cultures, step into other cultures, see how they think, and I think it helps us understand ourselves better and makes us better human beings. So there are about 200 illustrations of mine in this book. I illustrate for all my books. So Sita, all the illustrations are mine. Jaya. I think how do you experience culture as a writer is very different from how you experience culture as an illustrator, because the lines are different. So when I was, let's say I'm drawing Radha and Krishna, or I'm drawing Ram and Sita, or I'm drawing Shiva and Parvati, the lines are very different from when I'm drawing a Zeus or an Athena or a Apollo or an Artemis. The lines, the mood, the energy is very different. There is a lot of Veera Rasa, there is a lot of Karuna, not so much Shringar, very little Shringar, very little. You see, for example, the Greek obsession with musculature, the absence of symmetry. You see a desire to be very lifelike. None of which you see in Indian art. Indian art is highly impressionist, stylized, soft, almost feminine, lots of symmetry, value given to symmetry. So while Greek architecture is highly symmetrical, the statues are not. And that's exciting. And you see, and Indian statues are always located in these frames, while Greek statues tend to be freestanding. And you see the difference, and that sort of reveals so much about the different culture. I think the artwork, if you look at the artwork, you will see a shift in style and energy between the Sita and Jaya and Olympus. So, I also wanted to bring in a little bit of Indianness into the art. So, if, for example, if Zeus was a Hindu god, how would he have been depicted? So, a little bit of games I have played over here and there. So, it's not really a reproduction, but a recreation and a reframing of Western stories and Greek stories in an Indian style. So, some of, Hera wears jewelry like, Mahishi or a Maharani. Very different from how she would be portrayed perhaps or in the Greek traditions. So lots of embellishment and lots of Baroque style of stylization. So it has been quite an experience to draw this and learn this, and it's my own personal journey into a new space.